August 10th, 2026 at 6:03 p.m. We will start off with introductions. If we could start off down at that end with Jason.
Jason Chance.
Ellen Wheelan Waste.
Mary Heather Noble.
James Clark.
Laura Hartha.
Abigail Murphy.
Robin Saddle.
Steve Orzek.
Steve Cash.
Wendy Baker.
Mira Fiancasino.
And Mira is our new student rep on the board. She's showing up tonight for her first meeting. So
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
And I let her know that if she has questions for any of us or needs anything, that she should feel more than free to reach out and let us know what she needs. So. All right, we will jump online to board members online. We'll start with Ron.
Ron McLeod.
All right, and Ann.
Ann Mason.
And Jess.
Yes, Venable Novak.
All right, and Jamie let me know he would not be joining us tonight. Yep. All right. Do we want to do the administration in the room as well?
Sure. Yeah. Natalie Palazzo, Assistant Superintendent.
Courtney Cron, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Matt Karenti, Director of Finance and Operations.
All right. Our next item, order of business, is adopting the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
All right. Is there any discussion about the agenda? All right. We'll move to vote on the motion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, please say nay. All right, we have adopted the agenda. Our next order of business is our first public comment period for the evening. I do not see any members of the public in the room. If there are any members of the public that are joining us online that would like to make a public comment, please indicate by raising your hand. I'll remind everyone that we have a 3-minute limit on public comments. Right, I am not seeing any hands online, so we will move past the public comment period and on to our next order of business, which is the approval of the minutes from June 22nd and July 20th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, is there any discussion about the minutes from those two meetings? All right, we will go ahead and vote on the motion. All those in favor of approving the minutes from June 22nd and July 20th, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, please say nay. All right, the minutes for those two meetings have been approved. With that, we are on to the report of the superintendent. Turn that over to you.
We need to do bills first.
Do you want to do the bills first?
Yes. Good catch. Thank you. All right.
I could jump with bills.
Yes.
So I think it was July 23rd. Jason and I read the bills and had a few routine questions. It's the beginning of the fiscal year, so things are rolling, So, yeah, folks don't have any questions. I can let you know that we approved a general fund warrant dated 7/27 for $279,696.16. And there were two payroll warrants. One was dated July 22nd. For $327,471.03, and another one on July 23rd in the amount of $11,253.28. And I will make a motion to approve those as I just read them.
All right, is there any discussion or questions about the bills? All right, we will vote on the motion. All those in favor of approving the bills, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. All right, we have approved the bills. Jason.
And I will just put a plug out there. There's plenty of open slots on the sign up sheet for any board member who wants to review bills, learn how to do it. It's a lot of fun. So sign up.
There you go. All right. Now I will turn it over to you, Wendy, for the report of the superintendent.
Okay, so beginning with personnel appointments, resignations, and retirements. We have some for you here to approve. Sarah and Lisa are paraeducators. As we begin to understand fully the specialized services needs of our students, you'll begin to see paraeducators come on board, that are fulfilling IEP minutes that are determined in sort of late spring and early summer as we go. Erin Smith is an individuals and societies teacher who is actually formerly teaching at an IB school in the UK. He will be coming on to replace TJ Korndorfer at the high school. Michelle Whitney replaced Tim Hanley, and the others I think are fairly self-explanatory for you. So they're there for your approval.
All right. Is there a motion?
I move that we,
Go ahead.
I move that we accept the appointments as read.
All right. Is there any discussion about the motion? All right. All those in favor of approving the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. And any abstentions?
Usually this superintendent's report is about all the things that we've been doing over the summer. And you have a weekly spotlight out that begins to outline some of those things. The highlights that I might offer for you and for the public relate to facilities. I mean, as always, our facilities crews have done a wonderful job. We have 160 classrooms plus other learning spaces, hallways, gymnasiums, offices, and everything is clean from top to bottom. And Mary Hogan's had a substantial reorganization of their classrooms. That's been taken care of. Everybody's in to Bridport Central School so that we're ready to go for, all 6 of those general ed classrooms and surrounding supports. They just do a fabulous job, this team does. And so everything looks ready to go. There is, our camera project is almost completed. The doors and some access points that also is part of the security package that you approved, that will be rebid in the fall because in the first bid, there was an insufficient number of bidders. And so we're going to go ahead and rebid that in the fall so that work will follow once that bid is successfully awarded. So that will be kind of still to come in that sense. But otherwise, Bruce reports that we're in great shape relative to facilities. It's always the 8th wonder of the world. And if you're in hallways right now, you would wonder, are we really? But actually, it all comes together beautifully in some miracle, so it's a huge shout out to our facilities team for that. Matt tells me that we are shooting for a balanced budget, for FY26. We always sort of let things settle over the summer, right, in terms of other, encumbrances and expenses that come in and revenues. The big variable of that is our extraordinary reimbursements, which are reimbursements for students receiving specialized services that cost a particular, amount that the state says, okay, we're going to reimburse you all of that. That's one of those dynamics where we put in everything we think is an extraordinary reimbursements and they tell us what they're going to give us for extraordinary reimbursements. So that we don't know quite yet and might not be even finalized until October. But either way, our projections are we're maybe within 0.5% either way of the bottom line, which is that's pretty good. So more to come on that. IT, we have some interesting situations regarding getting laptops and whatnot for new staff and so on and so forth. All of these products that we use educationally take chips and things and memory and other supplies that are also used up in the creation of the data centers with AI and so on and so forth. So there are many problems, not just for us, but globally, in being able to get handheld or, let's say, personal technologies in expedient ways and at manageable costs. So we are struggling with that a little bit, and our IT team is refurbishing some computers so that we can kind of work our way through it, and we'll just keep watching that scenario to see where we are. If you ask me exactly how many laptops we're missing, I don't have that detail. I don't know if you do, Matt, but
We're not missing any per se. It's just that we have
waiting.
Chromebooks that we use for student devices. We have a slightly more powerful PC that we use for our teachers. Those are the ones that are in short supply right now, and so we're setting new teachers up with student computers to get them out of the gates in a way that we would normally do because of this supply crunch.
Yep. So we'll see how that materializes and works out. In HR, we've calculated that we have 90% or so of our staff returning, which is that feels very good. And we have 11 or so positions up to fill, plus perhaps some other para-educators as we are moving forward and finalizing those kinds of plans. So generally speaking, those positions are positions that are notoriously difficult to fill in terms of our SLPs and things of that nature. So generally speaking, we're in good shape to open. We have 29 new employees that will be joining us, and we all gather together for the first time on what we call opening day, for those of you that are new, and that is Tuesday the 18th of August. Everybody in the district, all employees, whether you are a nutritionist, a facilities person, a finance person, a licensed staff member, or an unlicensed staff member, gather together in the MUHS gym, and we begin the year. And we've invited board members to join us as well. It's a commitment, and it's a little bit hard if your working hours are traditional. But if you happen to be free from about 8 o'clock until 10:30 or any part of that, you are welcome to come to the MUHS gym. If you are there for the duration or the beginning, then we have some seats for you. If you are able to sneak in and sneak out because that works better for your schedule, there are ways to do that too. So it's nice to have everybody together. This is a wonderful place to work, and I think that day is the day that just sort of makes all that pop and come together, which is nice. When we are doing that, we will be talking about depths of knowledge as a way of raising the bar and thinking about the tasks that we're asking students to do in the classrooms and ways in which we're ensuring that there's cognitive complexity in that task. And so some of you might know what that looks like. I'm just going to pass this book around, for those of you just to look at as you go. You'll get a sense for the kinds of things that we're talking about. We've had some nice improvement in some our VTCAP scores, and so we'll be talking about that. That will come to you later, but it's a really nice celebratory moment. So if you're free, I would encourage you to come. We had an amazing leaders retreat on two fronts last week. The operations team, Matt led finance, food service, HR, and facilities and IT together to think about how to manage projects in ways that will keep us on track, run meetings, think about integrated work, and just overall kind of come together as a group in the way they do things. And our team led the academic leaders for the week. And so we all built our muscles, showing up at full speed. A huge shout out to Nellie and Courtney and Sonia, who is in Chicago awaiting the birth of a baby that will be coming into their lives as we speak. That they just did a phenomenal job. Our focus was the multi-stage system of support for students that we're working forward on, and the principals and district office folks built together very well. And so I think we're going to have some really great conversations this year, and we'll be doing things a little differently, and so that we can support students more equitably. We did have the conversation, James, about our accelerated students also in that. And so that made its way into our retreat. Thank you for reminding us of that. I will be doing a presentation to all licensed staff on Wednesday morning, the 19th, starting at about 9:30 in the auditorium. And you are welcome to that. We also can do that for you, but the benefit, if your schedule allows, which includes student reps as well, to come and be part of that, is you hear the Q&As, you hear the conversation that happens and where things are, and it gives you a more of a 2 or 3 dimensional sense, really, of things. Thanks to Jason, Mary, Heather, and Steve for joining in with the leaders on Tuesday night. There were about 20 of us that were able to stay for dinner and talk together, and so that was really very appreciated that you were able to stop in for that. There are enrollment projections, that we're working through right now. We anticipate having 4 more students as a district than we did in October of last year. So we'll see, right? Often, kindergartners arrive, even this week or the very first day of school, and others. So those projections are not final counts. This is sort of where we are today. We don't have to submit enrollment to the state until October. So that we make sure that everything settles. And Shoreham Preschool is coming through its last stages of its licensing process. We've had a very successful visit. We're trying to make sure that the report from the visit gets to the right place so that we can get through the bureaucratic piece, as quickly as we can. But the grounds folks have done a beautiful job, I think, with the playground, so, it's just, if you haven't had an opportunity to swing by and look at the playground for the littles, that is, just to the side of the school, I really would suggest that it's one of those really happy sites. So those are just a few things. Any question, anything on your mind about just sort of summer work and where we are that's helpful to mention now?
As far as the enrollment stuff, I know that last year Matt was saying that we're starting to skew towards the high school, that people are transitioning into the high school, so our numbers are bulking up at the higher level. So the 4 new students, are they coming in elementary right now, or are they coming in high school?
I'm not sure that I can say exactly in that respect. That's because it's not necessarily by name, it's kind of looking at that historic enrollment and seeing how many we have of this, that, or the other thing, in order to be able to make sure we've got all the students that we have in. One thing just to draw your attention to is that the Bridport Central School kindergarten class is 23. So, Andrea Way is one of our most experienced kindergarten teachers, and she is ready to go. And, she said, well, this is what I need. And we said, all right, then you got it, and so she feels very good about the year, and she's got good supports. So Jenny is sending a letter out today and just reminding people also that if they'd like to have their student in a smaller class, they have options to do that through C30. That's available to all kindergarten parents as they're first coming in, no matter what time of year, because they arrive in the district at all times, so otherwise, our classrooms look good and are ready to go. The principals, and I think, feel confident that they're going to have a good, strong start. Any other questions?
I have a quick question. Sorry, I'm not good at the raise hand function when I'm virtual. And less to do with the beginning of our school year in ACSD, but on statewide conversation, has there been any movement in the small by choice versus small by necessity rulemaking? I don't know how much happens over the summer, but I'm wondering if we're anticipating anything in the fall from the state.
I assume we will anticipate, that rulemaking process to begin. It's supposed to be finalized, if you remember your transformation timeline, by March of 2027. So my assumption is that conversation will begin in the fall before the legislative session with the state board. The AOE needs to propose. They'll propose the rules, and the state board will talk about that and think about that. The legislature will largely be taken up with the foundation formula and what that is going to look like. So that will be their, I think, big focal point. And I would expect that the rulemaking you're talking about would largely happen on the side through the state board. So I'll be sure to keep you apprised of anything that I learn once those conversations begin. Thanks, Jess.
I was just curious what the enrollment was at the preschool.
Probably I would say, depending on the day, like 18, 19-ish, something like that. One of the things that the team is thinking through is our ways as to wrap around care. If you remember, sort of stage one was let's get this building ready to go for pre-K and make sure we've got classrooms. Stage two is thinking about how to partner effectively, and LaShawn Whitmer-Sells, if you remember, half of her job is in supporting Jenny with the transition at Bridport Central School, and the other half is as the preschool principal. So she is actively searching for partners and thinking about how we can think about that. And I have every expectation that once we have those sorts of things, that more people, will come as we go. So it's fine. The classrooms are, they'll be up and running and going, providing we don't have bureaucratic delays, in which, might delay us a bit, but we'll see how that evolves. One day at a time. Okay. Am I forgetting anything? If Nellie and Courtney look slightly bleary-eyed, it's because they were really instrumental in the content last week, and they both are leading trainings tomorrow. For Courtney will be leading the STAR assessment training. If you remember, that's a new universal screener that we're using in many of our schools. So that tomorrow is the first time they will be interfacing with our staff and learning about that assessment, what that looks like. And Nellie will have the first time with the special educators and, getting them up to speed. So if it's all right with you, just kind of excuse them to the back of the room so that they can do their thing while we do the other things. They're working incredibly hard. This is one of our busiest times, as a district office, and they're doing a great job. So yeah, this is akin to Matt's budget time. Good. That's it.
All right. Is there any other questions for Wendy on anything? All right. We will move on in our agenda then. The next item is the report of the board chair. And we will start off first with a conversation about board goal number 2 and the potential related committee charge that we discussed in the executive committee. I wanted to have a conversation with the full board. Wendy, you'll definitely need to help me navigate this one. But just to refresh everyone's memory, our second board goal was student academic progress and wellness. I'll take the time to read it here. The ACSD board will ensure that baseline data and specific measurable targets are established to track and understand access, belonging, academic progress, and student wellness in elementary and secondary students. The ACSD board will incorporate the presentation and review of student outcome data into its annual work plan to provide accountability, identify policy needs, and track progress with the strategic plan. So that is the goal we set for ourselves earlier this year. And in there, you heard mention of student outcomes data. One of our committees is charged with specifically focusing on student outcomes, and there are going to be some operational changes that seem like it's worth the conversation and seeing if, as a board, we need to, should, could, would adjust to be a better partner with the operations side of things. So I will turn it over to you with that explanation, Wendy.
Yeah, so one of my goals, right, is to, which you'll learn more about at the next meeting, is really to help us make more meaningful use of data as we're continuing our work forward. And we have launched a tool that's called Open Architects. You probably heard just a little bit about it, maybe in the spring, and Nellie's done a beautiful job partnering with that group so that we will now have a data hub where all kinds of data can come into one place regarding students, so that we're able to understand trends across types of data sources, and at all grade levels and throughout our schools as well, so that we can all be looking at the same thing, and we can integrate social and emotional information as well as academic information. So it's our thinking, Nellie supports the Student Outcomes Committee, that the Student Outcomes, we could really use partnership from the Student Outcomes Committee in generating what are the types of questions you would love to see answered? What's the information that comes to mind for you that would be of interest? Last year, when we did presentations for you, oftentimes we would say things like, well, we haven't really collected that before now, or we didn't collect it across all of the schools, things like that, right? And so we're moving in those directions, but it's a great opportunity using this tool for that committee to start to generate other things. Like, what else would we want to know? Because it's customizable, unlike any of the other tools that we could have gone with, so that we can build fields. If you want to know, is there a correlation between academic success and sports participation or activities participation? We can build fields that answer those questions. So we, on the operations side, are full of ideas about all of that, and there'll be an opportunity for students to think about that kind of thing as well. But we could use board partnership, and the Student Outcomes Committee felt like maybe a good committee that could be just working with Nellie around generating that from a board member's perspective, which is different from operational. But sometimes we get lost in our own weeds, right? So, or flower gardens, depending upon your perspective. So that was the discussion that our team thought was worthwhile to just bring to you for consideration as maybe a focal area as the Student Outcomes Committee gets up and going in the next year. I don't know how that sounds.
And Jason and Mary Heather, I don't know if you want to add any more kind of insight into our thinking and why we thought it was important to bring it before the full board.
Yeah, I think my recollection is that, and I'm looking at the description or charge of the Student Outcomes Committee, and it is pretty broad, but I know, like, initially the formation of the committee was kind of following the strategic plan adoption and really focused on the strategic plan, and I sort of recall in our discussion we were thinking, like, well, how can we make sure that in this next year forward, in this next academic year, while admin is implementing this new data collection and data analysis capability, how can we make sure that the time spent on generating reports, compiling data comparisons, those sorts of things, is done in an efficient way that reflects the information that the board would like to see. And obviously some of that's going to be related to the strategic plans goals, both in improving student outcomes, but also looking at access and those sorts of things. And so my recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, is that we wanted to just bring it to the full board and say, like, do we want to take a look at the work of the Student Outcomes Committee and make sure that for this year in particular that we're sort of charging the committee with this specific, input to, being able to answer the questions that admin is bringing to us. Like, what would you like to see? Well, that committee can make some efforts in a close meeting, to really discuss those sort of particular questions in a much more nimble fashion than we can as a full board. Much like how, we've had policy discussions where Dr. Baker will bring up, we have these policy gaps. And we as a board say, okay, great, policy committee, can you work on that for us? So sort of a similar thing. And we didn't feel like in the executive committee, was necessarily our job alone to say, okay, let's make sure the Student Outcomes Committee works on these things. We thought we'd bring it to the full board and just make sure, in the interest of transparency and what Dr. Baker and her team is bringing to us, that it all makes sense from a full board perspective. So did that capture it?
I guess I would say, even without the open architect tool in the equation, what do we as a board, how are we going to meet goal number 2? That's the sort of the fundamental question. And I think a path that makes sense is to task the Student Outcomes Committee with part of that work, that we want to come back to the board and we all want to review it and accept it. So I think that makes sense. The tool that is used, the queries that are written, the reports that are generated, that's great. But I think the main thing is, how are we going to meet goal number 2 that we have set for ourselves? And that is directly linked to our strategic. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, Alan.
I don't think this is a wild departure for the Student Outcomes Committee. It feels like a rational evolution of what we've already been talking about as a committee. We've not been so beholden to the strategic plan that this feels like, whoa, what are you asking, this committee to do? Something that we have wrestled with is the sheer quantity of different measures of student outcomes that exist, right? That are including and well beyond academic data. So not that this shuts that down, but this is a part of that larger conversation that we've had since the beginning of the committee, and also really wanting to identify the practical, consistent ways that the full board is receiving information that feels kind of like our budget presentations, predictable, and that you're just always, learning and building on your learning year over year on different kinds of things. So as long as, and I have no worry that we're not talking about this, as long as what we're asking for is sort of more of a, not for the 26-27 academic year, these are the queries we'd like to run, but much, this is the kind of information we would anticipate this board or any board wanting to hear on an annual basis or a quarterly basis or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think that this feels in line with what the committee has already been sort of naturally gravitating towards over the last year and change. So seems very reasonable.
Any guidance from us or other parameters?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do we? I mean, do we need does something officially need to be determined by we've truly just, as a new committee that didn't have any history or routines to build on, the first probably half or longer of the year that we were new felt a little bit like searching in the dark. And I think certainly as the leadership from the administration have created a schedule of reporting out and what types of information to report out, and as we have wrapped our heads around the intervals at which different information becomes available. We've kind of organized ourselves a little bit around that. Again, I don't think that this takes us off track from that necessarily. I think it just gives the conversations we've been having maybe a slightly more clear focus in some regards. I don't think it shuts down other conversations we're having either. We also meet once a month for 2 hours. So there's time to engage in a nice long conversation about anything, and it's not happening at a fast clip. But in my experience on different committees, that still makes sense to me for this one, because we're not looking at facilities plans or, the things that we're talking about are dynamic, but they're not so dynamic that it feels like we should be meeting every 2 weeks to be determining things. I think it's more about doing a deep dive, which is why we wanted to build the longer chunk of time for those meetings.
Mary Heather?
I guess I just I have a question for both you guys, Dr. Baker and Ellen, and probably Nellie too, since you're involved with kind of spearheading the open architect data migration. What kind of frequency do you think, like as you look toward building the capabilities of this data collection system and reporting, I mean, what kind of frequency do you feel would be right for getting guidance from the board on, the sort of structural questions, I guess, that you're looking for from us?
I mean, I think I love the schedule that they have in terms of the 2-hour deep dive, because I don't think it's about frequency. I think it's really just about depth and idea generation. For example, if the committee was going to split up their work in terms of topics, right? Like if they were to say, if one topic was a content area, and then what is everything that we create? Let's look at a student profile without the name and see what that all says. What else would we want to know? What else should be in that student profile? What does that look like? I think though that rounding out, I use that one because, that would probably be well on its way to having a lot of great things that people would be looking at. I think some of the wellness discussions also could be rounded out. And now, I mean, the nurses database will connect in, the counselors will be, having their databases connecting in. And there's a district view that would mean that, board members can't see any student names or any student information in any of this. It's all kind of, you can query it and say, how many students are experiencing this, by our data. And so I think there are some nice deep dives that could take place, and then it would, give Ellen, as the outcomes committee chair, the ability to report out. This is the kind of conversation we had around this topic, and this is what we're hoping to see as the reports evolve, kind of thing. And then maybe the full board might have other things to add to that. So I love the deep dive. I think it's perfect for that work. Different from, other types of committees that have different types of charges. So I don't know, Nellie, if there's anything else that's coming to your mind, but.
I think the only thing that was coming to my mind is that the open architect is really, they're educators themselves. They were educators, they hire educators. And every district that has signed up with them receives a district support partner. And our district support partner's name is Emily. And so she also is aware of Goal 2, because that was one of the first conversations that I had with her. So we will meet with her monthly as a data team. And that information that her and I and this team, in particular, right, Sonia and Wendy and Courtney, will focus on that goal, and then we're able to bring that back to student outcomes. But even invite her if we needed to, for her to be able to provide that data too. So I think it's really about being cognizant about what we're looking at and going wide, right, and really deep into the data that we have. to make sure that we're making the right decisions for kids.
I'll just say before, Alan, I think we all should really think through this thoroughly. I think it's easy to think about the student outcomes committee and like, all right, committee's going to work through that. As Ellen said, like having been on that committee and the sheer volume of data that we were trying to wrap our minds around was pretty astounding. But I suspect that this conversation is going to be something that we are only talking more and more about, and especially if we're using this information to guide our decision making. I think we all should make sure that we are paying attention and putting our effort into thinking through this, just to make sure that, like Nellie said, we are ending up in a good space for kids. You know, if there's information that we want to use for decision making, that is an important outcome to recognize. If there is information that we don't want to use to guide our decision making, that is also an important outcome. And so I think we all, as a board, just need to reckon with this and really think through it and not just give it over to student outcomes. I'm happy to let student outcomes lead it and navigate, but I want to make sure they're supported as they need to be. I saw Ellen's hand and then I saw Jess's hand. So.
I am, and this is a question I'll probably get. I'm curious if, as a vendor, Open Architects allows for the client, in this case ACSD, to self-generate reports, or if they're the type of okay, so you don't need to go back to them. Great.
And I think, Ellen, that's an example of where that's one of the reasons we thought this partnership would work well, because you'll be able to see what our capabilities are now, vastly different from what they were 2 months ago, particularly around analysis. And so once you see that, then you, as a committee, you would have a better sense of, oh, okay, I see where we are now. How does that help us with our generation about what matters and how we know what would make us feel confident in something? Because we look at things from an operational perspective. You're looking at it from a public stewardship perspective. So, what does that all feel like? So I think at least if you're starting and Nellie is introducing the tool and its capabilities to you, you could report back and say, this is what we're finding, and then know a little bit more about it. Is there a path here that actually really helps us to make progress in goal 2?
The other thing that occurs to me as you're saying that too, Wendy, is that I think it'll be really important to, and we've gotten this certainly along the way, but in some ways it might be really helpful for the whole board as we start to all consider kind of what are the major questions or things that we'd want to get out of this kind of nimble, consistent analysis, is where the data that's input we have less confidence in, either because it's relatively new or just significantly changed in its collection, where there's something about it. It's the whole like garbage in, garbage out thing. So where the analysis, I think that'll help us all appreciate, and I wouldn't want to take things off the table for consideration because the data is more new or because we have a little less confidence in it, but just to have some kind of reality checks built in around the pieces that are feel kind of more or less solid.
Jess.
Yeah, I was basically going to say what you said, Steve, but I'll just add, I'm really glad that we have access and belonging, like, overtly stated in this goal, and, like, I think those things are huge and beg creativity, right? Like, from my time on the Student Outcomes Committee, but also just knowing humans, like, access and belonging are not easily tracked by data sources, and and sometimes we're nervous to bring in sources that aren't data driven. So I just want to offer being a partner, especially from the communications and engagement committee, right? Like, as student outcomes, and this whole board is thinking about how we're able to measure things like access and belonging. Excited for us to get creative and expansive when we're thinking about those things.
Yeah, Steve.
I I think it's a good idea to have the student outcomes committee lead this. If we're not on the student outcomes committee, what would be the mechanism to communicate like the kind of data that we would want to see as an individual board member? And that is the first point. The second point is, now that we've had 2 consolidations, we seem to have a critical mass to be able to report data, especially academic data that is broken down by school, because before we kept hitting that wall that said this class is too small to report the data because it would be identifiable information. And is that envisioned as something that we're going to now be able to collect and look at as a board? Because I mean, academic performance, that's something that we've been a little hamstrung and hampered by not having those critical masses. But
On the first one, I would say if there's other board members that have specific thoughts, if you want to email me and Ellen to start, I think we can start from there. And there's a good chance, again, we haven't figured out the flow of this, but I will probably bring those to the executive committee, kind of talk through those, and we can go from there. As far as the second comment, I could probably leave that to you, Wendy, and or Nellie. As far as the size constraints, I do think part of that conversation might just be a question of the validity of the data. And if you have a very small sample size, like we used to always run up against certain requirements as far as identifying students and requirements, but then what would a data scientist say? Like anything under X number is questionable to this degree. I don't know, but that's one thing I would certainly keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, the requirements around 11 are still as they are. I think the way that we've made good progress in having the right conversations has been to collapse grades 3, 4, 5 together, you know, in schools. And that way we're always over at that point typically. So I think, you know, we'll continue to do that, you know, as we need to. You know, I think in reality, what I think you will very soon see is that our schools are coming closer and closer together. So, you know, I think that will be I mean, our staff has just done incredible work, and I think it will be clear to you shortly that will become less and less of a concern. Yeah.
Yeah, Robin.
I have a quick question, Nellie. Sorry. Thinking about the data and the tracking progress element of the goal, are you going to be inputting like past data in there so that we'll still be able to see? Because, you know, my biggest fear is like we'll just sort of level set again and
So the way the system works is it receives overnight all of the data from our major systems.
Right. Okay.
So, and we can go back up to 3 years. So we will have a historical data, and we've made sure that we talk about all of our different platforms, right? PowerSchool, Elevation, even the fact that we had FastBridge and all these other pieces, right? So all that's going into the system. We're going to go 3 years back, hopefully, and then we'll be able to, right, start fresh. So like STAR, we're just implementing that, so that'll be new. But we've had FastBridge for a while and Panorama, so that information will be there. And we're also working on our assessments that we do through units to make sure that that goes in there also. So yeah, there'll be historical data.
That's great. Also, just thinking about the volume and sort of deduplicating some of it by getting them into one place is going to be so amazing. The other piece, I guess, and this is because I am on the Student Outcomes Committee as well, and just thinking about like feedback from the board and like how we sort of tie the two together is the policy connection. So like making sure our policies are capturing what we're looking for. And as many have already mentioned, there's a few like pieces that we know we want to do better around like, by do better, I don't mean we're not doing well, but do better capturing around like wellness and belonging and those pieces. And like, that just feels like an opportunity where policy could probably help with that too, because it's more than an outcome. It's more than a number in the new software. It's bigger than that. And so sort of wrapping our arms around all the good work that's already happening and really, so that's just the first sort of policy thought I had thinking about. It's more than just a presentation.
All right. Other questions, thoughts? All right. Well, what I'm hearing is that we don't need to adjust the student outcomes committee charge. It seems like it's broad enough. Everyone's comfortable with that. That's what I'm generally understanding. So, yeah, I think we should move forward from there.
Good.
All right. And in a similar vein, we are going to also have a conversation about board goal number 4. Board goal number 4. We'll spare you all my reading on this one. Was specifically the first sentence. The board will research and model the impacts of the 2026 yield bill and education transformation legislation on the district. So it is a brief sentence, but it is likely going to entail a lot of work for us in partnership with the operations. And so, similar to the student outcomes conversation that we just had, but very different. We wanted to touch base with the board and see, I think, what folks are hoping to understand, and then do we need to kind of shift and prioritize some of our work differently to, I think of it kind of as meeting the moment of, we need to be nimble and understand what is going on in the legislature, and there's other work that may not need as much attention. So, Mary Heather, Jason, is there anything you want to clarify as far as what I just explained to capture the executive
it's
committee conversation?
Sort of a similar question to how Jason framed the last one. We've stated this goal as a board. So how is this board going to, devote its time and resources toward that goal? And obviously, most of the work that we do as a board is done at committee level. So we discussed in the executive committee, like, okay, what could that look like? Obviously, one option would be to create a new committee. Ugh, that doesn't feel so great, right? We've already got a lot of committees, and a lot of our bandwidth is spread across a lot of committees. So the other thing we talked about was, the committees that are impacted by this kind of work. A lot of the examination of the impact and modeling of the education transformation legislation and the requirements of that legislation really kind of land in both the finance committee and also the conversations that the facilities committee was considering. And when we talked about whether or not to adopt this particular goal, what I remember is that, when we were contemplating the goal specific to facilities and moving forward with the capital improvement planning, a lot of us kind of went, well, it sort of depends on what's happening at the state level. And so one of the other things we talked about was, does it make sense to pause the work, the capital improvement planning work that the facilities committee was doing, and redirect that to work on this stuff related to board goal number 4. So we wanted to just bring it to the full board and pose that question to all and see what you guys think about how do we direct our existing committees to do this work so that we can be accountable for this goal. Did I capture that? Okay, I'm sure I missed something.
Yeah, and I think one of the main things is, like, part of that goal 4 is to engage and educate the public of ACSD and have us be conduits for that. So that sort of naturally falls with communications and engagement, but we've taken it on as a board goal, not as a committee goal. So, like, how are we going to do that work? I think some of the finance committee for sure has to understand the impacts of the yield bill. Like, that's, you can't build a budget, you can't plan until we do that. So I think that to some extent, every board member has to understand the impact of the yield bill, but the finance committee can sort of shepherd that learning and lead that work. If the facilities committee has less to focus on, remember the facilities committee is not a standing committee, it's an ad hoc committee that has a specific charge about capital improvement planning. If we're saying as a board that we're going to de-emphasize capital improvements this year, does it make sense to have the facilities committee in its current form, or do we shuffle a little bit to, like as Steve said, to meet this moment of, you know, big changes coming from the state that we have to absorb, understand, and then help educate our community?
One other thing I'll add too that I think we all should be aware of is that if we have the operations and Wendy provide updates about all of this, how that can look at times to the public is that kind of Wendy is directing all of that. I think we all recognize this year at the legislature, there is going to be a lot that is moving and changing. And I think at times people can attend our meetings and whoever is delivering the message, there's an assumption that that is the person making that decision. And I think we really need to work to partner with the operations side and make sure that it's coming from both of us at the same time and we can represent the conversation well so that it's clear that some of those decisions are not getting made in this room, that we are just explaining the decisions that are getting made. I think that's going to be really important in terms of communication and the visibility for how the messages are delivered with people and understood in our communities.
And it's certainly, I mean, you know, Matt and I show the bulk of the legislative pieces, right? And you've got the voluntary merger committee that will be coming up, and I'm sure that, you know, we'll be supporting that work, whoever's going and doing those things. And, you know, we'll be, you know, in the legislature and understanding what's happening and be helping with all that. I think, though, if you're approaching this, you know, you'll perhaps have decisions to make as a board. You'll have a representative that is going, at least one, right? That's going to a countywide committee that's talking about whether or not you change your structure. I think that feels like it's more of an active engagement versus a you know, receiving of information from the people who are looking at it from the operations perspective. So it's just really making sure that you've got a mechanism to do that, because I think that's going to be pretty important.
Steve, I saw your hand.
Yeah. So it's not something that people normally think about when we talk about this, but when you start talking about the yield bill and the foundation formula, this has a massive impact on negotiations because, I mean, I understand the facilities stuff that we're looking at and the facilities ask that we're talking about. I just want to bring it up again that it's $40 million of our $50 million budget that goes for personnel. And if we're talking about foundation formulas and yield bills, and we're getting cut. It is very important in negotiations to know what kind of a pot we're drawing from. I mean, Matt runs these numbers for us all the time, but if we're getting cuts and they're substantial, they're going to hit negotiations hard about who we can have, how much we can pay them, and how much flexibility we have in negotiating. Plus there's the added pressure right now of inflation on our staff, and they are really we're really going in these negotiations wondering how this is all going to impact. Nothing's been done yet, but when you're talking about the yield bill and you're talking about a foundation formula, there could be some substantial financial impacts of those things. And when 80% of your costs are personnel, if there's a significant change, that cannot be protected. So I think the board needs to be cognizant of those impacts. And it's the thing that I worry about the most when I worry about board stuff is how are we going to keep our people paid and happy? So not a question, just a thought. You asked how committees are going to be affected. That's how ours is going to be affected.
You know, this might just be, so I really am open to everyone just being like, let's keep it simple, but it does feel like, and Steve, what you just said made me think about this too. I think calling this the facilities committee just seems wrong. I mean, I would almost suggest like the same people become a different ad hoc committee, even if by name. Because of what Steve is saying, you know, the yield bill has this impact on so many things. The facilities are an obvious place, but I don't know. I just wonder if I had thought facilities had become a standing committee, but if it feels like it can fairly easily, you know, from a procedural standpoint, be paused. And we've had ad hoc committees in the past around kind of time sensitive, specifically focused, researched topics, then, you know, why not just make this like the ad hoc yield bill committee? And but again, if that's like unnecessary paperwork just to essentially do the same thing, I'm mostly thinking about this as like if there are other members of the board who might want to be part of it, or from a public standpoint, just to sort of see and know like this is a different focus area for the board this year.
So, Jason, your hand then. Yes.
Well, I mean, one option is to, like for this year, we could essentially combine the facilities and finance committee into a single committee
Right, and just make that.
and make it a 5-person finance committee, and just know that for this year, if anything capital improvement comes up, that committee could review it, and then that committee would have 5 people that could
That's right, 'cause
shoulder
it's
the burden of
overlap is pretty much.
yeah, there's a couple
There's a
people
couple
overlap
people,
anyway.
so it ends up
So,
being like a 5-person.
Yeah,
committee.
yeah.
I don't know, that's an option that seems relatively low effort to make that happen.
Okay, so Jess.
Yeah, go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, my question was kind of answered by that, but I'm just thinking about the work of the finance committee, and also the communications and engagement committee met before this meeting. And spoiler alert, I'm going to be reaching out to all the other committees because we're planning our town halls for the year to generate topics to engage stakeholders about whether it be updates or things that we want more information about. So it feels like, whatever route we go, there's going to be a lot of overlap with that group of people, the finance committee and the communications and engagement committee. So not a super well thought out thought from me, but just wanted to make it as simple as possible. So maybe it's doing what you just suggested, Jason.
Go ahead,
I
Matt.
have an update that might help your conversation. I'm part of the merger study advisory group that's meeting with AOE to try to figure out some of the rules that were left gray in the legislation, specifically around the composition of the merger study committees and the charge to create proportionate representation relative to school size. There's no instruction manual beyond that right now. And you have some school districts with under 50 students and some with, over 5,000. So there's a proportionality problem in terms of scale and composition and weight of the vote of any one district within the committee as far as the outcomes go. So the way that the conversation has been shaping up is a mix of proportionate representation that scale to like the U.S. House of Representatives, like for every 500 students, one member of the committee. And if you do that, you can kind of get groups that make sense. Problem is, for some districts, that means a quorum of the board is created, and so that's a whole different can of worms. But I'll cut to the chase. ACSD was modeled with 5 representatives relative to the group that we're in. That becomes sort of a committee in and of itself, and a big chunk of work for 5 board members to take on in terms of the meetings that would go into being a part of that merger study committee. So a lot more to come with regards to like how those, if it's going to be 5, and if it's 5, how the weighted voting might work, because that's the second half, right? You can have a ratio of students to representatives, but then you also need weights in the voting so that the equity is maintained all the way through.
Do you have something to add right here?
Well, I guess building off of that, the other thing that I would want to alert you to is that that there's a lot of reading. You're going to get a lot of reading and a lot of analysis. And again, Matt and I will also partner and will be behind all you, right? Doing all the things that support you, as is part of what we need to do in providing you with professional advice. But it's plausible that you could be asked to make a decision about whether you feel that the foundation formula funds our district such that you don't believe that it is advisable for us to merge with any other district. And you are going to want to represent, I believe, to your communities that you are well versed in that whole topic, right? And I think that level of engagement in that work, so that you're truly understanding and able to ask all the right questions and brainstorm, even if the people who are in a committee aren't all the ones that are attending, somebody's supporting the work of the folks that are there, other than, administration. I think that's just the kind of thing that is going to be really important for you.
Yeah, the question I had, can you just remind me the 5 reps or whomever is participating in this merger study? Is it only board members or is it?
As
can't
only
remember.
board members, the administration will support,
Gotcha.
right, of course,
Okay.
but board members are the only voting members. Yeah.
Thank you.
And you have to, which is coming up, you need to choose one by September 15th. And that first meeting needs to occur by October 15th. They have just announced the selection of David Younts as the chief facilitator of the facilitators. David is a former superintendent and, has been a long time educator in Vermont. So he knows certainly the landscape. So his job will be to find the other, the 7 facilitators that will be working in those 7 areas. And once that happens and the AOE, right, all that comes together, then that merger process will begin.
Thank you.
So at this point, I think we've pretty sufficiently laid out the work that needs to be done. And we just need to decide who is going to do that work.
So the mergers is going to be mainly based on what's coming out of the legislature, right? And you said there's a lot of reading.
So actually, I would say it's not going to be based on what's coming out of the legislature only. It will be based in part on what's coming out of the legislature regarding the foundation formula and things of that nature. So there'll be a lot of modeling of those things, but also, I imagine in this process, people will be saying, okay, well, how many of everything do all of us have, right? And can all the students be accommodated in one place or another place? What are the student opportunity possibilities that could take place? How much is everybody's budget? What percentage of, I think our county is 125 million altogether, maybe counting the Career Center, who is also at the table for the merger, right? So, okay, are we going to dissolve that independence and do something else altogether, right? So each conversation is going to have behind it a lot of research and primary documents and things that are supporting it to make sense of what is currently in place and what might be likely to be in place, so that people like Matt or I or others can model scenarios so that in the end, when the report is put together, which is by September 1st, 2027, that's when the final report has to come in. There's a mid report that's earlier than that. Is it, Matt, is it winter? January?
January feels.
So those those reports signal direction. And I don't think that you want to be caught on your heels around those things. I think you want to be right in it with those. You know what you're talking about, and to Jess's point, know what to go seek advice about. And how to do that so that you're informed.
Just for clarity, I don't think PAHEC is within the Addison merger study group, as I've understood it. They're the CISA.
They're in the
But not
CISA, and there's conversation about the tech centers
We haven't figured it
being part of the
Yeah.
discussion in
Makes
those
sense.
mergers
Okay.
as they think about their models,
Yeah.
right? The whole, which will be part of this next legislative session. So I think it would be I think we should plan for all the conversations to be there and just understand the big scope of the work.
Especially if you're talking about comprehensive high schools, you would have to include the community
Exactly.
center, because it's part of that model.
Yes.
So at this point, we've talked about not having the facilities committee do very much. Do we transition this workload onto an existing committee? Do we combine finance and facilities to do this work? We could come up with a new committee if folks want. Is there other suggestions out there that people would like to offer up?
It's a quick question. We have to identify a single board member by September 15th.
Correct.
At what point would other ACSD representatives need to be engaged by the October 15th meeting? Or?
That is yet to be determined, as Matt says, and we'll get more information as we go. I mean, I would advise you to have a group of people who are interested and who have the bandwidth to be able to follow this work, and then you can begin to pull right from that group as you need to fill out additional seats, or as you're talking together about that. If you're prepared, then whatever it is, you can move nimbly.
That is also further down in the agenda.
Right.
This conversation first, and then we will get to that. Helen and then Mary Heather.
Yeah, I mean, I would propose, I guess, combining the finance and the facilities committee and charging them maybe under a new name as an ad hoc yield bill research committee to be our primary points of contact, or our first line of understanding around the impacts of the yield bill on ACSD in order to meet goal 4 over the 26-27 year.
Just as a point of order, I think finance is a standing committee, is it? And I don't think you can change that.
You can charge them with whatever
You can
responsibilities you
yes,
choose.
you change their charge, but I don't think you can dissolve the committee and form a new one that has somebody in charge. So it would still have to be called the finance committee, I believe.
We would have to vote to increase the size of the finance committee anyway.
Yes.
Specifically a 3-person committee.
Mary Heather.
Well, I was going to just suggest, as a matter of getting, people's support for one way or another, just kind of going down and a thumbs up or thumbs down on these two options, either increasing finance by adding facilities to it and charging these folks with this particular thing, or repurposing the facilities committee. Those were the two options that we kind of have crystallized so far. And I guess the other one would just be to create a whole new committee. But if you want to go through, we can, if that's helpful.
I think that makes sense.
Do you want me to also include new committee? or no?
I haven't
As an
heard
option?
lots of enthusiasm for the committee when I've looked around the room. I do fear, I mean, the report that Wendy just mentioned, as I'm understanding correctly, would be due potentially this winter, kind of that early report. And that is 4 months away. And so if we are going to try to come up with a whole new committee, that will be its own layer of process that we will need to work through. Not that that's a bad thing, but like I said, just trying to meet that moment as efficiently as we can.
Yeah, I didn't know somebody else needs to go. I would think it would be important to hear from the facilities committee if they would want to be repurposed in that way and continue to serve on that committee, going from studying facilities to deep dives into legislation and lots of study. So I think that might be something we would want to ask the committee members if they want to do that.
Yeah, if there's members of the facilities committee that would like to answer the question. Yeah.
I'm ready to become a subject matter expert.
Jason, who else besides you and James?
Mary Heather and Lloyd Barr.
It was Barb, yeah.
All right.
I mean, from my perspective, like, if I go from being on 3 committees to 2, then I feel like I will have a little extra bandwidth to really take on some of the stuff and participate in the voluntary merger discussion. So I'm for that direction.
I looked up the timeline in case it helps. So September 1st of 2027 is the due date for the merger study groups to submit their reports. They have a year of work towards that report, and then those go to the state board, and then ultimately to the lead facilitator to synthesize a master report. Which
Those
is
are their
January.
final reports.
That's the January 1st one that we were
Yeah.
mentioning. That's 2028. January 1st.
All right. I think there are 2 options as I hear it, Mary Heather. I have not heard much enthusiasm for the new committee approach.
Okay. So why don't I just go through our list of board members and we'll pose the question first of combining the finance and facilities folks together and directing this new expanded finance committee to tackle some of the work for board goal number 4.
Yep.
So this will be option 1. We'll go through. I'll take a tally of whether or not this sounds good to you. Or maybe it would be best if you just tell me which one you like. The second option is to just utilize the folks on facilities. Ask the folks on the facilities committee to spearhead the work on in support of board goal number 4. So first one or second one?
First one is combining.
Combining.
Okay.
Yeah, like you suggested, Ellen. And the second one is just redirecting the facilities committee. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through the list.
Is everybody clear on the options? All right,
Okay.
see about head nods. Go for it, Mary.
All right, Steve Cash, I'm starting with you. Your preference?
Combine.
Okay. Steve Orzak.
Option 2, repurpose.
Okay. Robin.
Combine.
Abigail.
Combine.
Laura.
Combine.
James.
Combine.
Mary Heather is also going with combine. Ellen.
Combine.
Okay. Jason.
Combine.
Ron.
Combine.
Jess.
Combine.
And Anne.
Combine.
All right. We have our answer. So, we're gonna need a motion to make this for real.
Do we have to break it up? Or can we combine? I mean, I'm thinking about like, do we have to break it up as far as like both redirecting the finance committee and reconstituting it, or allowing for an expansion of it?
Yeah, but we have to cover total number of participants on the combined committee
Yeah,
and any charge changes.
I think that makes sense. Me too. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. Steve?
So I'll make a motion to increase the membership of the finance committee to 5 members.
Just so I understand, we currently have 2 on finance.
Oh, we had 2 in a vacancy there.
All right,
But Jason is on both. So you wouldn't count twice.
all right, but we need to go to 6 for new board member.
Mhm.
There's overlap between the committees, so it would be 5 because the people on it now count as our 4 people between the 2
We
committees.
would have 4 with combined and then 5 with.
I knew.
The vacancy.
It's 5, yes, will work.
You might still need to add extra board members to create a merger study representative. group.
That is going to be a separate conversation. We're going to work through this one first, and then we will get down there in the agenda.
Next.
That's the motion that's on the table. So
All right, so do people want Steve to repeat the motion, or do they feel good? They understand it.
Understand.
All right,
And this is just going to be for this academic year.
oh, I don't know. Is that what?
It's got to be at least until, like when we re-org in March, we still got to have a 5-person combined committee at that point. So we need to set an end date for this that is after that.
You could do as many as 2 years, right? For as many as 2-year period of time.
I mean, we could say 5 members until the board changes the membership number. So we don't have to set an end date. I think. If we need facilities again, for example, we could split it off again after, or once this gets resolved, we could change the structure of the committee again. But I think it's unnecessary for us to put a time limit on it, or that's like what happens if we hit that deadline and they're still working.
all right. So 5 people indefinitely on finance. All right. People ready to vote on the motion? All right. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. All right, we have approved increasing the finance committee membership to 5 people until we decide to change it back. All right, and then I believe we need another motion to kind of bring this onto the finance committee's radar, it sounds like.
So,
Mary Heather?
Mary Heather, are you interested in making the motion?
You can go for it. I will record it.
Okay, I move that the charge of the finance committee be expanded to discuss the yield bill and its impact on the district and any legislative changes that might impact the bottom line of the district. Does that work?
Good. We may also be able to narrow it specifically to our goal
Yeah.
that we set, and I just worry legislative changes could be
Okay.
quite broad. So I think if we just focus on specifically board goal number 4, I'm tasking them.
I don't have that in front of me, so I can't include it in the.
Just that first paragraph.
Okay. Let's see. So then,
Do we want to just insert or goal number 4 language?
yeah, but it does say education transformation legislation.
Mhm.
So I don't know, how would you want me to narrow that, Steve?
I think board goal number, yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, motion to charge the newly expanded finance committee to support or to conduct work in support of board goal number 4.
That works.
All right, I'll let Mary Heather write real quick. I see your hand, Laura.
And when I do the minutes, I can just I'll repeat the language of board goal number 4 in there.
All right, yeah, Laura.
I just wanna, something was tickling my brain. The update that we made to A2 in June actually says at least 3 members on the finance committee, so we technically did not need the first motion.
Oh, at least.
So,
That's
all
right,
right.
we did notify that.
Dotting our eyes.
We can't get those minutes back, Laura.
No, that's right.
All right. Mary Heather, would you be able to state the motion?
Yeah, motion to charge the newly expanded finance committee to conduct work in support of board goal number 4, which reads the ACSD board will research and model the impacts of the 2026 yield bill and education transformation legislation on the district and follow the community engagement plan to inform and engage stakeholders on critical decisions in the next calendar year.
All right. Is there any further conversation about the motion? You have something to add, Wendy?
Are you also asking them to consider capital expenditures as needed? Is that, and if you are, is that something that's important to state there to funnel that work to them? I want to make sure you've had a moment to consider that.
I feel like it's implied because the finance committee, that's in its purview already, right, to make recommendations about capital reserves. Question mark? I think I thought it was, but
I believe so.
I think if there's something super specific to capital improvement, that the board should weigh in and delegate that work over the course. So that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Seems important that you're clear as to how you're going to handle that.
You might suggest using the capital improvement plan as a roadmap to say like the new facilities or finance committee has the charge of working within the capital improvement plan towards those goals that have already been laid out in that plan. So it kind of puts constraints around it.
It sounds like your thought is the whole board can work with the capital things, which is fine, no problem. Just we just need to know who's going, who are we bringing what to, under what circumstances. So that's if that's your feeling, just let ahead nods around that. It's okay.
All right. I'm seeing a fair amount of head nods. I'm not seeing any no's. So I feel like we are in agreement. If there is capital improvement questions that come up, we as a board will to navigate those. All right. Is there further discussion about the motion that's on the table? All right. So it shakes to that one. So we will go ahead and vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. All right, we have approved the motion that will help us to navigate and reach for goal number 4. Finance committee has 5 people and some additional work to do. All right, we will jump to an easier agenda item briefly. 2 things I wanted to bring to everyone's attention is the VSBA has some August webinars that could be helpful information for all of us and specifically those involved in the CISA and voluntary merger conversations. The first one is a webinar about CISAs that is tomorrow. I encourage folks, if you have time and space, to sign up for those, to do that. The second one is August 20th, and that will focus on voluntary merger studies. Laura?
Do you know if those will be recorded so that we can watch them later if we can't make that?
I would guess they would be, but I don't want to say definitively.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me check I don't know if my registration has that.
My
Let
email
me
did
check.
not specify, but
All right.
somebody registered me because
Our next agenda item is the VSBA conference on October 29th and October 30th. I don't know if anyone knows that they are going to that.
I go almost every year. I really encourage people to go.
All right.
If it's possible, I would like to go.
All right. Did you have some?
I'm also hoping to attend,
All right.
assuming nothing comes up at work.
In previous years, how many people have we had attend that?
We've had 3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
All right.
Barb was also a regular attendee.
All right.
So.
All right. Yeah.
I just want to answer Laura's question. So it looks like everyone registered to attend the webinar will receive an email following the webinar with a link to the video. So if you are interested, you can't make the live one, register anyway so that you can get access to a recording.
All right. Next, yeah.
Just if you are interested in going to the VSBA conference, Darcy typically facilitates, all of the stuff around that. And it is, where is it this year?
I think they're still going to have it in Burlington. I hope they're still going to have it in Burlington.
Yeah, I haven't double checked that. So, but typically if you need to stay overnight, then that's provided, it just depends on what people's schedules are and what you can do. So it would be a good year to go, I would say, for sure. Yeah. And I usually attend as well, to work with the team. So.
And I think the VSBA announcement just said save the date. I don't think they've got specifics out there.
Maybe not.
registration opens August 17th.
All right. Moving down the agenda, the next one is the voluntary merger committee assignment. So, what I do know about this at the moment is that we need to identify one person from the board to be involved with the merger committee work. We need to identify that person by at the latest September 15th. As far as additional board members, I haven't heard anything about that yet, with exception to what you all heard tonight. So we need to find one person from this board that is interested in doing that work. I do think that it will take a substantial, it will be a commitment. So I think whoever is interested in doing this needs to recognize that for sure.
The first meeting needs to take place on or before October 15th.
So at this point, I'm trying to think of our meeting schedule going forward. Let's see,
We only have one meeting before
24.
Yeah. Because the September meeting is late. It's like the 14th or something. Because September starts on a Tuesday.
So we would either need to identify someone August 24th, or if we were to push it out further, September 14th, which seems a little bit close. So I would say be prepared to figure this out at our next meeting. I think if people are interested, if you want to email me, Jason, Mary, Heather, we can kind of work from there. Does anyone have any questions? If we hear that there's more board members that are needed, obviously we'll certainly let folks know. I'm not sure kind of at what point other board members would come into that role.
It's expected, I think, that there will be other board members. This is your person that will begin, go to the first meeting, get the information, bring it back, and start the process.
I wonder if it doesn't make sense to maybe identify 2 board members to start. Just because we know we're going to have probably a couple people or several people on this eventually. Like, can we not have 2 people, like, maybe go from the beginning and just.
Right now, I think that unless you get further guidance, the suggestion is that you will have one person, that person will have a vote at whatever the first thing is that everybody gets to vote on. There might be another set of guidelines that comes out that changes that, but I think that's the direction right now, is that you identify one person. And so I would do that with an alternate.
Yeah, I can understand.
Right. And yeah. And that's my best advice right now.
Don't be creative. Okay.
Yeah.
The authority to compose the committee lies with the facilitators, like statutorily.
Depends on how you look at it. Yeah. This will be a highly political process. So, I think we need to, on one hand, Matt's absolutely right. On the other hand,
On paper.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as I said, if folks are interested, communicate with me, Jason, and Mary Heather. I anticipate that we will sort this out on the 24th. Do have until the 14th. So, any other questions on that? All right. Our next item of business is our new board member committee assignments. I wanted to welcome Abby Murphy to the board. You got a full glimpse into the board work this evening. And the executive committee made the decision that Abby is going to serve on the now expanded finance committee. So she will be joining the ranks of that group. I think there will be a lot of work to do there, as we all discussed. Look forward to having you involved in it. All right. That brings us to our second public comment period of the evening. There are no members of the public in the room. Is there anyone that is joining us online that would like to make a public comment? All right. Don't see any interest in making a public comment online or in the room.
I can safely say that the public on the call is not interested in making a comment this evening.
Well, I will take that and we will move on in our agenda. All right, next is agenda item H, an executive session. Do I have a motion for that?
I move that we enter executive session per 1 VSA 313A3 and 313A4, discuss the employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, and discuss the disciplinary or dismissal action against a public officer or employee, and that we invite Dr. Baker and anyone else into executive session.
All right, we have the motion. Is there any discussion of the motion? I saw your hand, Robin.
I just wanted to welcome.
Before we.
Yes,
Sorry.
we will do that before we fully shift gears. So, yeah, Mary Heather.
I just want to confirm, do we have an executive session link set up?
I'm aware of.
We should do so.
All right. We'll handle that after we'll have to shut down this one and then create one and set it up.
Restart.
Thank you.
All right.
So Ron and Ann
Also, that's another link.
will get an email.
Yep.
Yes.
And then
You 3 will get an email with a new link.
All right. So, is there any discussion about the motion that is on the table? All right. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. All right, we will now transition into executive session. Mira, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Having you on board.